Hi, everyone. My name is Andrew Sotomayor, and this is Masters of Makeup, the show where I talk to the best makeup artists in the business about their careers, how they started them, and what they've learned about life. I am so excited because today my very special guest is none other than Carmindy. Carmindy, thank you so much for being here. I've been looking forward to this for a long time. We've been messaging back and forth, and our schedules finally matched up. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you so much, sweetheart. Andrew, it is absolutely my pleasure to hang out and talk with you.
We have so much to talk today. So it's like being the kid in the candy store, kid in the Carmindy store.
I love that.
I know that you started in makeup when you were really young. I heard
15.
15. Tell me about that.
15. So I grew up in Huntington Beach, California, which seems idyllic, right? It's like surfers and the beach and, everybody looked like Baywatch babes. And I was the awkward kid. I was overweight. I had braces. My mom permed my hair. I was so bullied as a kid, and I just was a misfit. I didn't fit in with anybody. And so growing up there was really great, but I needed to find an outlet. And my mother was a watercolorist and a painter. And I would go to her art classes with her and just be like, wow, this is amazing. And I got into looking at fashion magazines. I used to love reading like Elle magazine and seeing these women like leaping on a beach and being free and traveling all over. And I said, how can I create art and travel and do that? And so I literally, in like freshman year of high school, I had no friends. And in the library in my high school, they had fashion magazines. So I would sit there at lunchtime and I would just pour through these magazines. And I was like, wait a minute, this is really cool. And I met a friend of mine whose dad was a makeup artist in Hollywood. And I was like, that's a job? Cool. Like, how do I get that job? And so I interviewed him. And at that time, I was like 16 years old. And I said, what does it take to become a makeup artist? And he's like, oh, well, there's these agencies in LA and you have to drive, to see them and then just sign up as an apprentice. So I was living at home with my folks. I had, a little tiny piece of crap car. And I had my dad build me one of those Hollywood style makeup mirrors with the light bulbs in the director's chair. And I just drove to LA, anytime I could out of school and on the weekends. And I apprenticed, I assisted, I cleaned brushes, I got coffee. I just wanted to be on set and learn the business. And that's how it all began. So I was really young and very focused.
I love that whole story and the fact that you started it with this sort of like thoroughly modern Millie sort of approach.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't have a way to really research it because the internet is not a thing yet for fashion. Yep. And I'm just going to go to California and figure this out trial by fire.
Yep.
That is such a different approach than I think we even have an opportunity to do nowadays, because nowadays people start learning about makeup so young.
Yes.
So by the time you get to college age, or by the time you get old enough to drive a car anywhere, you've already got your skills packed up, and along with maybe a whole lot of product, huh?
Yeah, I think these days people are really bombarded with almost too much information. And I think that's why you see so many capable young people with every opportunity in the world out there clueless about what they really want to do, because they didn't have that survival instinct. I had gratitude that I was lucky enough to know what my calling was at a young age. I love what I do. I always loved what I do, which is not for everybody. I mean, people really struggle with that. They're like, how do you find what you love to do? And then also the fact that it helped me get over such severe insecurity of being bullied. That is a power that I wanted to give back. And the one thing that I did remember always is that I would look at certain makeup artists or hairdressers or stylists. And the one thing that I never did is I never played the compare and despair game. I never looked at somebody who might have been more successful or doing something different and be like, oh, well, I'm not there yet. I knew that I had a unique talent. My talent was creating natural, clean looking makeup. So I would see some of these big, famous makeup artists, and they were doing the cover of Vogue and avant-garde stuff. And I would look at that as just another art. It's almost like going in a museum. There's watercolorists and pastel painters and oil painters and sculptors. And I just looked at everybody doing really incredible things and I appreciated it. And I never had that envy chip. I was just happy to be at the party and happy that I was getting hired to do what I did best, which is more of a clean watercolor approach, because not everybody can do that either. So there were many times, and I'm sure it's happened to you, where I was with groups of people that I didn't vibe with, that were more in the negative space, that were more like, and what I would do is I would choose just not to work with them again.
Yes, I mean, I tell people all the time, and I think this is so underappreciated, especially for young makeup artists who are getting advice from all sorts of places.
Yeah.
What you say no to, the jobs you turn down, are just as important as the jobs you say yes to.
Andrew, yes, totally. Totally.
Oh gosh, you know, I think there was probably a time and a place where if you were an actor or a makeup artist, and this is a controversial statement, I feel like there's a time and a place where you wanted to say yes to every single thing that came to you. To assume that every opportunity is one worth having is maybe a little bit outdated, just because there are so many ways to learn now.
Yes.
That I don't think we need to subject ourselves to people who are not going to respect us enough as a craft. I don't think there's a reason to go out there and taking a job where you know this photographer is not really going to do the same level of work that I'm already able to do, or this person is just not going to, didn't treat me nice the last time I worked with them. They're probably not going to treat me nice this next time either. So let me go learn and practice my skills somewhere else, or with a friend, or if I'm not getting paid, it's on my Saturday with a friend who I enjoy collaborating with.
That's exactly right. Sometimes I would say yes to jobs where I didn't get paid because I loved the group that I was working with and it was really spectacular. And then there were other gigs that paid a lot of money, but they were horrible people. And I know I'd be miserable for 3 days. And I'm like, you know what? I had faith enough in myself to be like, it's all going to work out and you still need to be happy. And I mean, and every time that instinct said, don't do it. And I did it. And I was like, oh, I knew I shouldn't have done it because it was horrifying. But when I took this, Andrew, you won't believe this. When I took What Not to Wear, everyone in the industry said, what are you, crazy? You're going to ruin your career. That's so cheesy. You're on TLC. Like, oh my gosh, what are you doing? So everybody in fashion thought I was committing suicide. I looked at it differently. I was like, no, you know what? I do clean and easy and natural makeup. The people who need it the most are not the beautiful models and the celebrities, but the women at home that nobody's talking to. Where is their voice? Where is their expert? And I made a decision, and I'll never forget, the beauty editors are like, well, if you do that, when we interview in magazines and we say, what celebrity did you work on? I said, I'm not talking about celebrities anymore. And they're like, well, you're not going to get interviewed. I said, yeah, I will. Watch. It'll take a minute, but you'll get there. Because this is, there are makeup artists that work with celebrities, models. I've done it all, but I want to focus and be the real woman's makeup guru. And sure enough, they came around. And now everybody and their mother's on TV, okay?
You know, when I think about Kevin O'Quan, I think what the most groundbreaking thing about him was that he blew the lid off of all of the secrets.
Yes.
He really made makeup for the first time in history something that was accessible to everyone, that the knowledge was accessible to everyone.
Yes.
And I think that you've really done a lot of that as well.
What I needed to do was bring it into everybody's household. That's what I wanted to do. Everybody in America, people that would never have access to fashion or beauty, I wanted them to know that it was easy. I find everybody beautiful in their unique way. So when I look at a face, I never look at a face and say, how can I fix this to make it look better? What I do is I look at the face and say, what's magical about that unique person, even if they're unconventionally beautiful, and let's turn that into a showpiece. But I'm with an amazing, amazing team right now, but I listen to the women that you're talking about, the ones that don't have a voice, the ones that be like, you know what I'd really like? I'd really like a mascara that does this, or I'd really like lipstick. That's what I pay attention to. And then I take my philosophy, my experience, and then I create a brand for them.
Well, and I like the way you do your products and your makeup, even just your own personal makeup. I love that you kind of have these little tricks that are subtle
Yeah.
but make a difference. Like you talked earlier about appreciating art, and you'll see these amazing avant-garde things that people do that are so over the top and so exciting
Yeah.
and colorful and just, mind-boggling. But there's a way to always let those amazing avant-garde things inspire even the most subtle details.
Yes.
I noticed with your own makeup that you turned sideways and your eyeliner in this video was tweaked up just a little bit.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a cat eye, it wasn't even like a kitten eye. It just lifted just a little bit. Only you could see it sideways. And then when you turn back center, it's just like, oh, her eyes are lifted and awake. And I thought, what a cute little like secret trick.
I love that you noticed that. Well, it's because, when working with real women, all ages, they like a lot of women come to me and they might be say over 50 and they're like, I want to do a cat eye. I'm like, girl, that ship sailed. Let's just be honest. We can't do a cat eye if you don't have the lid to hold it up. But what we can do is the little trick, the little baby wing, that little kind of flick. So it does lift and you can wear it all day long and you're playing into the trend, but at the same time, it makes sense for you. That's what I try to do for every woman that I work with. Every product I develop, I make sure, and I don't know if you know this, but I product develop backwards. So like, for instance, my favorite thing in the world, which is my foundation, it's next level. I love it. I always get it from the lab. After I try it, I always put it on a woman in her 70s. Because if it's going to work on a woman in her 70s, it's going to work on a woman who's 50, 40, 30, 20. But that's not what companies usually do. Usually they develop a product, they slap it on a model, they photograph it, it looks gorgeous, it's retouched, everybody goes out and buy it, and then they wonder why it's not working on them. Yeah. So all of these like crazy trends with the contouring the living daylights out of your face to literally say you're not good enough, your bone structure's not good enough, your face isn't good enough, we're gonna contour you to high heaven just on a Tuesday to go to work. This too shall pass. What never goes out of style is true art and beautiful makeup that enhances who you naturally are. I started doing this show. It's called Inner Beauty. It's on QVC, on all their social channels. And it just takes my tiny little old what not to wear segment of when I just kind of get together that woman and I sit her down. And again, I tell her to look in the mirror and be like, talk to me. And we have that moment where it's like, she's stressed, she let herself go, she's unhappy, she got out of an abusive relationship. And I've been through so much that I find where I can connect with her from those old wounds, shine that light, she shines, and then it's just everybody's happy and we all look really good.
And you talked about also, yes, and with makeup specifically, you don't normally think of that as a place to do a whole lot of good in the world. And I really feel like that's why it's so important that we're doing these kinds of conversations now while we're all stuck in quarantine. And we have to really understand that life is not going to go exactly back to what it was before this.
Right.
And so we have to really recognize whether you're a makeup artist or you're working on Wall Street, there is always a way that we can do good with whatever skills we already have.
There's nothing more intimate than being that close to somebody, having to have them trust you. Yeah. And even in the future, whether it be with mask and gloves, we won't get rid of that. If we do it this way, through Zoom, there's an intimacy here that we still need to connect on. And we really need to support one another and help each other.
Well, you've seen a lot of people through all these makeovers on what not to wear, and I'm sure in the Inner Beauty series that you do as well, you've seen people like really bare their soul and talk about where they feel insecure and where they haven't felt beautiful. And whether it's that initial moment where they're talking about their struggle, or it's afterwards once they actually get that transformative experience and they get the makeup and that whole new look, they always cry.
Yeah.
Why is it people are always crying at the end of a big makeover?
It's so true. I think because they have spent so long listening to the negative record in their head. It's that damn negative record that it's like, I'm not good enough, I'm not pretty enough, my nose is big, my forehead's huge, I have small eyes, my skin looks like crap, he left me because, and what I try to do before I put a primer on them, before I put mascara on them, is I try to break down where that insecurity first stems from, address it, get rid of it, have them look into the mirror with new, fresh eyes that they've never used before to see the beauty that I see, because I've never met this person before, right? So I'm looking at them going, oh my God, you've got beautiful brown eyes and your quirky smile is adorable and that dimple and these freckles. Like I see all this awesomeness. They've been trapped in that broken record. So I try to break that down first. And then when they look at themselves after the makeover, their mind has changed a little bit. Their mental structure's changed. That broken record has stopped. And I think that's where the release of crying comes from, because they finally realize what time they've wasted.
So you had done an Instagram video just the other day where you taught your viewers how to make a spirit bottle.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. With Sweet Paul, my buddy Sweet Paul.
That was so fun to watch, and the bottle is beautiful. So I got to find just the empty bottle alone because that was a gorgeous bottle. And I remember you talking us through it, and you were doing something that would, much like a lot of the things we talked about today, potentially be a little too airy for some people to appreciate, maybe too emotional, too lovey-dovey, or just too different than the kind of things we talk about day-to-day life, or things you wouldn't necessarily tell your boss about in your office job.
Yeah.
But you have this way of getting people to try things they haven't tried before, including taking feathers and putting them in a bottle and wishing them and saying thanks to the angels, they need our support right now, or putting Purell into a glass bottle as well.
Yeah.
I'm sitting here watching this video and I'm like, Carmindy is basically casting a spell, but no one person's gonna sit here and watch this video, certainly not me, and think she's a witch.
No.
You're thinking, my God, what a fun activity to like retrain my brain and get excited.
Oh, I'm so glad that you like that. I've been doing these little rituals all my life, and I don't consider myself religious. I definitely am spiritual, but I'm also not shoving it down anyone's throat. I know in this new wellness world, you know, everybody's like into it. I'm like, catch up, where you been? Like, I've been doing this since I was a kid. But what it is it's intention, whether you're Jewish or Muslim or Christian or agnostic. What it is an intention. And what I do with my intentions is there's got to be an action item. Because you can sit there and be like, oh my gosh, you know, I'm going to manifest this, but unless you do something about it, it's not going to go anywhere. So what I like to do, especially with that spirit bottle, is that you can take any element that you have in your house. You don't need to buy a special crystal or anything you have. When you put your intention into that and you stick it into a jar and you keep that jar and you look at that and you remember what your focus is supposed to be, that keeps you going in that direction. It's that simple. You don't have to believe in anything. All I'm saying is you write it down. When you go grocery shopping, right, and you don't write a list, you get there and you're like, I need that and I need that, and you overspend or you forget something. Well, you make a list when you go to the grocery store, right? Well, why can't we do that for our lives, for our intentions, for our moods?
It's a reminder to you, if nothing else, if you don't believe for a second that any of this has any magic to it, you can still believe that it's going to remind you to come back to this thought or come back to this goal or this dream that you have for yourself.
That's absolutely the point. And again, it doesn't matter what religion you are. You do it anytime, any place, anywhere. It's literally about what's going to make me feel good. And listen, I don't feel good every day. There are days where I have not gotten out of this bed, binge watching Netflix, eating a pizza and drinking tequila. Okay. I have been there during this quarantine going, oh my God. And then what you do is the next day you pop yourself up. You say, okay, you leaned into that day, but then you lean into the healthy day the next day.
It's so important that we cultivate some type of balance because, you know, when we're in a bad state or we're going through a rough patch, it's difficult to then be giving to your clients or to be listening to everyone else's opinion in this creative space that's collective. But you know what, Joan Rivers said something that I think is also true. When she lost her husband, when her husband died, she talked about how she really truly mourned in that period, and it was brutal and it was tough, but she understood that she's like, I gotta just let myself feel this and experience this pain so that then she would be able to go on to the next step, having like as best as she could close the chapter on that moment in her life.
it's important that you have to embrace the good and the bad, because the bad, as I always say, doesn't happen to you, it happens for you. And that's why you get to the next level. There was a few years ago where my second business had collapsed. Photo shoots had changed. I used to be the spokesperson for every makeup company and every, but then they were using the influencers and the social media people. So there was a moment where it was like, I don't matter. I feel like I don't exist. And I was involved in a very abusive relationship with a man who was emotionally and psychologically abusive and verbally abusive. And I was trapped living in an apartment with him for many years. And I had to get out. And I had no money, nowhere. I mean, here I was, I had been on What Not to Wear. I'd written 4 books. I'd had a house in Miami. I'd traveled the world. And then all of a sudden, it went to nothing. Bad divorce. I was sued for alimony. I had to pay alimony for years. Like, I was at rock bottom, and I was in this abusive relationship. And I said to myself, how do I get out of this? And I said, you're a warrior and you can recreate, but you gotta go. So I called some friends and asked for help. And I'd never asked for help before because I was always Miss Independent, doing her own thing. And I escaped in the night with a U-Haul, put stuff in storage, left every stick of furniture I had behind. I had a friend who had an empty apartment because she was filming a TV show in LA. And she's like, stay here as long as you want. And it took 7 months for me to get myself back on track. But what I did is I took that 7 months. I didn't date anyone. I looked at it. I mourned it. I was like, why did I get myself involved in this? How did I let go of all this greatness that I'd created? But it doesn't mean I'm not still great. It means I just am ready for the next chapter, Carmindy 2.0. I've never been happier than I am right now. So I had to go through those years of holy shit, like everything's fallen apart. I've lost it all to get back to this place. And if that is not the truth, you have to go through it. That's how you're a phoenix on the other side. For many years ago, when I was still on What Not to Wear, that I had this idea, because I love travel. That's my other passion, is traveling the world. I love, love, love it. And I had this idea where I wanted to travel around the world and show beauty treatments and adornments. And I remember it was all going to be about empowerment. And I took it to the network that we all know that loves the table flipping. And the female executive said, we're not interested in female empowerment. We want conflict. And I said, well, then I'm out. Not cool. Then I took it to a travel channel and they said, we're not interested in female travelers. It's male dominated. And I went, are you kidding? Now that was years ago. Times have changed. Definitely times have changed, but I still think that they do love the conflict. I think they do want to see that crazy, and it's up to us to change it. And that's the one thing I always try to tell people is they're like, oh, society this and society that. Well, we're society.
That's why I wanted to do this series, because I just feel like I've been so blessed by the makeup artists who've been hanging out with me on this show and who've mentored me throughout my entire career, and from the women who've taught me about life and everything from acting technique to cooking skills to how to laugh a little bit harder to makeup tricks. Like, this is the kind of stuff that I want to get into. And so honestly, Carmindy, between you and me, until somebody decides this show needs to be somewhere other than online and where I'm putting it, I'm fine with that, because I truly feel like at the end of the day, the most powerful thing we can do ourselves is to follow our curiosity and know that where something's going to eventually take us, be open to surprise, don't have all the answers. If we just start off by doing what we know is right and good and what we value, then I think that's taken me a lot of really amazing places.
Well, Andrew, baby doll, that's where your magic is. This show is that magic, and what you're saying matters. I mean, even in my career alone, people said, what you're doing is not going to work. And I'm like, I don't care. I love it. And it will be beautiful because it's light. What you're doing is light. What you're doing is you love it. And these are conversations that we need to be having. And
but you're also talking about big, big, big business as well. Like, you've been on the biggest makeover show in history. You've been on some of the biggest TV networks and the biggest selling TV networks in the world. Like, this is major, major things. But the thing that people need to recognize as well is that even if your business that you're starting up is not going to get bought by the sharks on Shark Tank and become a $1 billion company, that doesn't mean that you can't have an amazing life.
That's the secret to happiness. Never once am I like, oh, this company sold for $2.5 billion and that's my goal. If that was my goal, then I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing, because it's not about money. It's about creating product that makes it easy for all women, all ages, all skin tones to be able to easily figure out a way to look and feel their very, very best. And I haven't changed this track.
Well, for everyone who's been watching, thank you so much. This has been Masters of Makeup with my very special guest, Carmindy. Thank you so much for joining me, and we'll see you all soon.
Mwah.